This is Glasgow Rangers Nation. I am Owen James, and this is all your latest Rangers news, where Phillipe Clement has just finished speaking to the media ahead of our game against Ross County on Saturday. Obviously, this game will be here, live watch along here on the channel. Obviously, come and join us for that. Some interesting points to come out of today's presser. Lots of discussion points. We're going to cover the key points now. We'll have a more in-depth look into it, obviously, in tomorrow morning's video. Some very interesting things that came out. Obviously, some stuff around fitness of players, some stuff about availability of players. We've got news about the availability of Proper, Igman, Raskin, Cortez, all mentioned in the presser today. So we'll look into that and we'll talk through that in this video. So hang on for that information. It is very much upcoming. Clement also discussed sort of the transfer rumours and transfer links and speculations as much as he was ever going to. As we know, Phillipe Clement does not like to talk about transfer rumours, transfer speculation, or rumours linking the club to other teams' players. Clement spoke first of all about being excited at having a full week of training with the players. Obviously, there was no midweek game. I'm sure we would have loved that midweek game. Obviously, Red Bull Salzburg beating our Champions League conquerors Dynamo Kiev 2-0 in the Lubin Arena in Poland. Salzburg apparently signed Bobby Clark, the young lad from Liverpool that Rangers were linked with, for £10 million during the week. I picked up on a Liverpool podcast earlier today. Obviously, proof positive that Rangers never could have afforded him, not if he went for £10 million. So yeah, he worked. It was interesting to work with the team and the players who were returning from injury. It was obviously a week where he's tried to, get the best out of the squad that we have, what we have on the field. There's no new arrival is going to be able to come in now ahead of tomorrow's game. So it's pretty much working with what he's got. He said that Nico Raskin returned to training today and Hamza Igman also trained. Now, obviously, if Raskin only returned to training today, he is highly unlikely to be available for tomorrow's game, although that does obviously put him in with a chance of at least, I think, making the bench for the game against Celtic next weekend. Now, that's obviously very promising news for me. Last time Raskin played against Celtic in the cup final, he was by far and away, in my opinion, the best player on the park. Certainly had Callum McGregor in his pocket in that cup final. So that is very promising news. I think, a lot of times I've talked about wanting to see a flat three in midfield, of Raskin, Barron and Diamonde. I think obviously with Raskin's legs, Diamonde's creative talent and Barron's fighting ability and gritty ability. Barron was the player who was put up before the media. We'll cover that as well in another video. Also, I think, if Hamza Igman has only just trained this week, today, again, I highly unlikely we'll see him start. We may see him from the bench. We may see him play. You never know what with the situation. That's just how it is. He's back in training. I mean, that's a positive. At least he's training with the squad now. He was only doing one-to-one work formerly. So, at least that he's training with the squad now. I think the sooner we can actually get to see this young man play, the sooner we can actually get to see this young man out there, the better. This is a player we paid some money for, obviously not a king's ransom. I mean, 1.5 million, 1.6 million, whatever it was, for a striker isn't a great deal of money after all. But we do need to start to see a return from him. With the gloriously inconsistent Cyril Dessers, the lacking match fitness. Lacking match fitness, Danilo as well. It is what it is, isn't it? I think, obviously, hopefully Hamza will play some part at some point. Although I do think he will be highly unlikely to be risked in the Old Firm game on the 1st, especially given Clement's track record for not using players, that have not played minutes, have not played a lot of minutes in games like that. In terms of the transfers, in terms of transfer speculation, Clement said everyone's been working really hard to get us back to. Well, let's talk about Ibrox as well. He talked about this as well. He said, everyone's been working hard to get us back to Ibrox. we're back there as soon as possible. The club have been pushing and they will continue to do this. Obviously, that was in suggestions that tomorrow could be the last game at Hampden. As I mentioned on the video this morning, hopefully it isn't the last game at Hampden. Hopefully it's the last of the league games at Hampden, but there will be at least 4 other games at Hampden this season, the 2 semi-finals and the 2 finals. Hopefully they will definitely be on the calendar this coming season. In terms of transfer speculation, Clement again, I think, no matter what the fan media guys say, like Stevie Clifford tried to say on Rangers Review this morning, or what the professional media guys say, you're not going to get anything out of Clement on transfers. That's just who he is, and that's just how he is. Very, very rarely do managers ever talk on transfers or on targets or on players or on other clubs' players. It's just not the done thing. Clement said that he won't speak on any transfer rumours. He said, though, the most important thing for every club is to get the right players in. I know everyone at the club is working really hard in these busy weeks. Just a further reiteration of what he has said all along, that Niels Koppen and the football department are working hard to try to obviously get players in. Now, there's obviously a great debate over that. There was rumours and reports that Koppen was getting a bit fed up with the board. The fact that he had a lack of funds, the fact that he couldn't really go and do what he does, which is bring in fine players and bring them in due to the lack of budget, due to the need to sell before we buy, due to the fact that we've obviously got a lot of dead wood. The likes of Scott Wright, the likes of James Tavernier, the likes of Kieran Dowell, Tom Lawrence, Ben Davis, Mabi Matondo, all still on the squad, eating up, massive wages and, contributing extremely small amounts for that. All those players that I've named have, not really had the best start to the season. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that James Tavernier and Tom Lawrence have been 2 of the worst players in the whole of Britain so far this season. Look, he says that there obviously is developments there. There's work there. There was rumours this morning, obviously, over that Brazilian centre-back, Kaiki or whatever he was called, from Almeria. There was alleged loan with an option to buy with, I think, 750 up front, and then a further 7 million with the sell-on clause, which Almeria turned down. That is obviously a signal that if they're going to bring in a player like that, then that's a player that's going to start. You're not going to commit that amount of money even to a young player like him and then not start him. Although we will have to remember that he probably would need a couple of weeks, obviously, to get his IKEA and his Wix shopping done before he would be able to play, of course. Clement spoke about the fact that he was very much focused on the players on the squad and in the team at this moment in time. He said they're training and working hard to get results for this team. I'm busy with the squad and working with the staff to improve our squad. In terms of that squad, there is a lot of improvement needed. I think we can all recognize that if we fail to bring in any new faces, and I don't for a minute think that we will fail to bring in any new faces, I think there will be loans coming in. I think there will be very few permanent transfers due to the lack of funds. But again, I think this is very much dependent on us selling. I think we can all kind of admit, even, if we were to take our Rangers blue goggles off for a moment, that this squad is nowhere near good enough to compete for the league title this season. It is nowhere near good enough to challenge Celtic this season. I've said that pretty much this squad, as it stands on the 23rd of August, is going to finish closer to 3rd place than to 1st place due to the lack of talent in it and the fact that some of the players are quite simply not up to the task anymore of competing with our city rivals. So, that's where we're at. We do need new players. I admire Phillipe for obviously trying to get this squad better, to try and improve this squad. But there is a saying, isn't it? You can't polish a turd. In terms of the other players, Leon Balogun has returned. So that's good news that Leon is back and available to play. That obviously is especially important given the news that Robin Propper is a doubt for tomorrow's game. But Phillipe Clement did qualify that by saying he will be available for the Celtic game. So that I think is positive. I even went as far as to say, I think after Propper's injury, when it was kind of said that it wasn't as bad as first feared, that if that was me and Balogun was fit, I would start Balogun and Suter against Ross County. No disrespect to Ross County, but to get Propper fully back, fully fit and fully ready to go for the Celtic game, I think it's far more important that Propper is fit, available and good to go for the Celtic game rather than for the Ross County game. It's in that game where we need all our first choice players, all our top talent players, to be able to give them a game. The likes of Propper, the likes of Cortez, the likes of Raskin do all need to be available for that game, if no other. Given that the fact that that is the very biggest test this season and will be the biggest test this season. No disrespect to the rest of the SPL, to the Aberdeens, the Hearts, the Hibs, the Dundee Uniteds of this world, but none of them will hold a candle to either of the Old Firm teams this season. And I think it is between, as we know, it's always between Rangers and Celtic who wins the league. At this moment in time, unfortunately, they are a long way ahead of us, but we do need to, if we're going to give it our best shot to get near to them and at least give them a decent game, have our best squad available. I think even if Proper is 50-50 for tomorrow, I would still not play him, not risk him, and go with Balogun over Proper. Cortez is back in training next week, fully back in training next week. That's what was said by Phillipe Clement. So obviously no chance of him playing tomorrow against Ross County. If we can get a full week's training into Cortez, hopefully that means that he could be available from the bench on Sunday against Celtic. I think there's no point risking him. It is a situation where I think we're going to have to be very careful with Oscar Cortez, how we manage him back, how we bring him back. I think throwing him in straight away could obviously risk re-injury. Any player like that who has got a bit of a history of getting an injury, coming back from it, and then getting injured again, just throwing him in from minute one into the rough and tumble of the SPL is not the best idea. But having him on the bench to come on at least make an impact could be very promising for that game against Celtic at Parkhead. As for some good injury news, Scott Wright is a doubt for tomorrow. Hopefully he's also a doubt for the Old Firm game. Realistically, genuinely can't see what that man ever provides. He'd struggle to get a game for my Sunday league team. He really wouldn't. They're shit. On the Dujon Sterling injury claim, he said that Dujon played last week with his arm issue. Rumours on his injury were untrue. He played last week through a small issue. He is a tough guy. All the reports of the broken wrist, damage to his wrist ligaments, to any ligaments, were all false. I think it was just a case of people seeing him, perhaps not noticing that he had some form of strapping on against St Johnstone. And then obviously, that started, they did notice it at training, then put 2 and 2 together and got 5. And given the fact that obviously Sterling has had some injury troubles in the past, people obviously started to worry that this was another injury for Duj. It's good news, obviously, that he is back, that he is obviously fully fit and available to play. And Philippe's right. Dujon is a tough guy. He is a tough guy. You see that with how he plays the game. He's physical. He's in your face. He runs through brick walls for this team. Dujon realistically should be one of the first names on the team sheet. Now, look, realistically, we don't really need 2 defensive midfielders against Ross County. No disrespect to Ross County. So I would probably be playing Dujon at right back. I really would. Get Tav out, put Dujon in there. Let's see how he goes. Because, realistically, if we go into the Celtic game with Tav at right back, Dyson Mido is going to rip Tav a new one. Dujon Sterling, for me, has to start there. If you play Tav against Celtic in a week's time, you're going to have a situation where you've basically opened the whole of the right side of the defence to Dyson Mido running in behind you. Whereas I think seeing Dujon Sterling play at right back tomorrow, getting him back into that role, getting him used to playing on the right side of the defence again after his assertions in midfield, I think are very, very much the needed thing for Rangers. Clement talked about the fact that he says, I'll always try and make things better. I am focused on that. There were a lot of positive points last week in how we created chances, but we should have killed the game earlier. I want to see a confirmation of our improvements tomorrow against a tough opponent. And I think that's right. Against St Johnstone, it was 2-0, but it could have easily been 3-4, 5-0. We do need to be more clinical in front of goal. We do need to start putting our chances away on a more regular basis. There needs to be that killer instinct in the forwards, in the midfielders. And it doesn't just need to be one player or, one individual who provides the goals. It needs to be a situation where the team spread those goals out across the midfield and across the attack. The whole team needs to contribute when it comes to scoring goals. We can't just go along continually being reliable on one player, as we have in the past with James Tavernier. Cyril Dessers has scored 3 out of 5 this season. We need to have a situation where wingers are chipping in with goals, midfielders are chipping in with goals, the strikers obviously are scoring goals, and those goals are shared out. We can't have just one player that we are relying on to get our goals. And Clement's right. We do need to be more clinical. We do need to take our chances a whole lot better, especially if you then move that forward to against Celtic, to the Europa League, where chances are more few and more far between than they are against the likes of Ross County, Dundee, St Johnstone, for example. You do need to have that more killer instinct, and that needs to start tomorrow. Against a team that will be fighting hard, that will be probably putting a low block in, that will be making it as difficult as possible for us, that will be breaking up the play as much as possible, slowing the game down. And also, a team that last time they played us, they beat us. They've got that confidence from that. But there should be no way that Rangers are losing to Ross County. No disrespect to Ross County, but with the relative budgets and the relative quality of the players, no matter what you think of our players or the quality of our players, we should be putting away a team like Ross County. On the issue of young players, something that a lot of fans have, got their knickers in a twist over, me included, the fact that we do want to see the likes of Robbie Fraser, Cole McKinnon, Bailey Rice, Zach Lovelace, all playing a part in this team, getting a chance to actually impress. Clement did talk about youth. He said, we want several young players out of our academy on the pitch. It was an important thing for Rangers. I think we missed the B team leagues playing in second or third league like in other countries. I think that's a two-leveled statement there. Clement, I think, he is reiterating this desire that he's often aired, that he wants to see young players break through, that he wants to see academy prospects break through and play, the same way that obviously Ross McCausland has. I don't personally get why he isn't willing to give them more of an opportunity, why the likes of Lovelace, Fraser, McKinnon, Bailey Rice especially are not getting the opportunity to play, especially against these lesser teams in Scotland, who we should be putting away easily. And like I've said on a number of occasions, if the likes of Bailey Rice, Robbie Fraser, Cole McKinnon, Zach Lovelace can't do it against the likes of Ross County, Dundee, Hibernian, St Johnstone, then they're probably never going to be good enough for Rangers, and that's something we've got to face. So, I agree, we do need to see these players play. And I hope that Phillipe follows through on that statement and actually plays them. I think it's kind of a two-folded statement, from the fact that he talks about the fact that, the B team doesn't have that league involvement. And that's maybe the reason why he's reluctant to use these players, because they're not getting competitive games. A lot of what the B team do in terms of their games are friendly games, as we've seen against Derby, Blackburn, for example, in recent weeks. So, maybe the lack of competitive football that's played by the likes of McKinnon, Rice, Fraser, Ncio, Stevens, etc., away from the first team is a worry, and perhaps the reason why they're not breaking through as much. I think Clement makes a good point. I think there's no reason why, Rangers B, Celtic B, Aberdeen B, Hearts B, the bigger teams in Scotland can't or couldn't, start in the lower leagues and just have a situation where they can't go any higher than the Championship, like in other countries, which does happen in Europe. I think Clement makes a good point there. I think that's something the SFA need to look at, especially if they want to raise the standards in Scotland. They want to raise the standards of team play, of competition, and also of the quality of player coming through. If you're putting Rangers B, Celtic B, Aberdeen B, for example, into the Championship eventually, you're going to raise the standard of teams coming out of the Championship, because they're going to have to raise their game to beat the B teams of the Old Firm, or of Hearts and of Aberdeen, for example. There is a chance to really try and raise the standards, and also for some of these younger players that could be part of the Scottish under-21, Scottish under-18 teams, also to play competitive football, which will obviously aid the national team. So you'd think the SFA would be interested in that, although, as we know, the SFA are very, very much absolutely not fit for purpose. So some interesting points to come out, some encouraging points on the injury fronts. Obviously, with Raskin back training, that Balogun's back, that Igman's trained, that Cortez will be back next week. Obviously, that Proper is a doubt for tomorrow, but will be fit for Celtic. So there are some positive news on the injuries for a change. It's nice to actually have something positive to talk about when it comes to injuries, rather than the usual Rangers injury problems. It's also nice as well to see some of these players actually returning by their deadlines, and not actually, us coming out and saying, oh, well, 4 or 5 weeks has passed for Nicholas Raskin, but it's going to be at least another month or at least another 10 weeks because the Rangers medical department are about as much use as a chocolate teapot. So, all positive there from that aspect, but some interesting points coming out of the presser. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, on the way out, could you do me 2 favors? 1, smash that like, and 2, remember always, we are the people.